What up, everybody? Hello, hello, check, check. How is it going? Let me get some confirmation that I am coming through live. Looks like I am. And while I'm looking at the chat, if y'all want to let me know if you have any trouble hearing me or if I'm coming in too loud, too hot, I sure would appreciate it. But I hope y'all are having a great Saturday. Thank God for Saturdays, too, I'll tell you. Like, if we didn't have Saturdays given to us by God, I swear the man would have us slaving 7 days a week. So thank God for that. All right, looks like sound is all good. Great, so awesome. I hope y'all are doing okay today. And I'll just sort of shoot the breeze a minute and idly chit chat until everyone has a couple minutes to pop into the hangout. So what is up, Lenny Mears, the Aussie drama, Jamie Brown, Eric Metzler, Tacoma Hooligan, Irish Skywatcher, Pat Mustard. Is that like Colonel Mustard? He did it with the candlestick in the billiards room. Because, you know, everybody has a billiards room. Great. Awesome. All right, so we've got, hello, new here, Mr. Faceless Jake. Hello, hello. Wolverine, what's up, everybody? All right, so yeah, we got about 30 people popped in for now, and it is 2 by my clock and by my phone, so I guess I'll get started with the few things I wanted to go over today. So while I'm thinking about it, I'm just going to go ahead and share my screen with you guys now, so I don't have to fool with it and worry about giving away my Hangout URL. So let's see here. Sharing my screen with you, sharing my screen. Oh no, don't maximize, stupid thing. I swear I have so much trouble with these damn Hangouts. Bear with me, people, I swear. Yeah, it wants to put the screen share thing all the way to the right of the page. Okay, wait. Ugh. There we go, sharing the screen, yay. So let me make sure that the screen share pops through, or do I have to present to everyone first? Present? No, I guess I didn't have to do that. All right, so anyway, now you can see my screen. Great. Okay, so pop over to another browser so I don't have to worry about that. Okay, let me close that out. Right. So first, let's go over the presidential alert thing, because there is a little bit of a buzz about it. The other day on the 3rd, I guess it was. Was it the 3rd? Let's see. Yeah, it was either Wednesday or Thursday, so I guess it was Wednesday the 3rd. Myself and my wife got it was just exactly the same thing as an Amber Alert that you get on your cell phone. But instead of an Amber Alert with like what color car it is and the name of the person that's allegedly took the youngin, it just said President Trump, presidential alert, and then basically just that it was a task and that no test and no action was needed. But there's a lot of people that are a little bit worried about this because, well, a few reasons. For one thing, you've got the whole October surprise looming because we are in a midterm year, and it seems like sometime in October there's always, during an election year, there's just always something crazy that happens around the, October Thanksgiving season, right? And so this whole presidential alert thing, it seems to be a little bit unnerving to people because, frankly, I've never received anything like that my entire life. I mean, I have gotten Amber Alerts; those come through pretty frequently, and it gives like that really annoying buzzer sound that the emergency test broadcasting system always. It's like a buzzing sound. it did that, and then it gave the alert. So I wasn't too concerned about it, but you know, there is this sort of, and I'm really still not very concerned about it, but there is this sort of line of thinking that that test is basically going to be the precursor, or you know, it's like the test before the actual event happens. I mean, that's what some people are saying. Like every time there's one of these FF incidents, these false flag incidents, it appears that there's some sort of a simulation or a test going on simultaneously around them. And so, you know, I think that it's not that big of a deal. Although the fact that the president is able to contact, well, not everybody, a lot of people didn't get the test message, and so I suppose that's why they do the tests, is to make sure that, you know, to see how effective it is and see how many people get the message. But I definitely did get it, and I wouldn't even have looked at it, but I assumed it was an Amber Alert, and I figured if it was for my county or whatever, I might, you know, be a little bit more vigilant for whatever type of car is on there, right? But a presidential alert, like what could the president possibly want to tell everyone at once? And that's definitely up to speculation, but it brings up this article. This is from the wired.com, and the article is entitled The Long Strange History of the Presidential Text Alert. So I'll just read the highlighted bits that I sort of scanned through first and picked out. So Wednesday, whether you want him to or not, the first nationwide test of the government's presidential alert system will unfold at 2:18 p.m. Eastern, when almost every cell phone user in the United States will receive a text message from FEMA saying this is a test of the National Wireless Emergency Alert System. No action is needed. So real quick before I go on continuing, let me look at the chat and see, did everyone else, most everybody get the presidential test alert, or was it fairly unique for myself, because I did get it on Wednesday. So, oh, hey Candy, what's up, girl? So you didn't get it? Oh, day before your phone broke. Okay. Well, that sucks. Got it. Yeah, it seems like so far the people I've talked to, it's about 50-50, but maybe it's even more. Yeah, maybe it's even more than 50-50. A couple people got it, one didn't. So, but reading right along with the article, because, again, I've never seen that particular alert before. Okay, so reading along with the article, the test alert, which has already spawned numerous jokes about President Trump's Twitter habits, is actually a rare public display of the classified side of FEMA's daily work. The agency, best known as the public face of the federal government's response to major national disasters, originally started as, and continues to be, its secret doomsday planner, overseeing the so-called continuity of government efforts that would ensure the evacuation of key officials to mountain bunkers and airborne command posts after a catastrophe. So there definitely is that aspect of it. You know, I guess we can expect to hear an automatic alert from the president if something really catastrophic bad happens. And that could be anything from an earthquake to a hurricane. And in fact, this test of the alert system was apparently postponed because of Hurricane Florence. They were originally going to do it in the middle of September, got pushed back to a week, and then they finally just did the test on the 3rd here a couple days ago. So, you know, it could be anything from that to any number of things that we'll get into, but it could be earthquakes, or it could be invasion of the Chinese, Russian forces, or it could be any number of things that you get from there, like Donald Trump wants to have extra cheese on his sandwich at lunch or something. I don't know. I mean,
Donald Trump's 1 millionth tweet.
His millionth tweet might go on there or something, yeah. So, okay, but going on, because there was a couple of bits of this article I thought were interesting, but I will put a link up. I should remember. I'll try to remember to put it in the show notes, but I'll at least put it in the chat if it'll let me. Yeah. Okay, so Right. Okay. So later in the 70s, the Watergate scandal actually derailed an update to the Conelrad system. As a Conelrad was a previous method of reaching out to the public for the president, but an update to the Conelrad system as public distrust of government surveillance forced the FEMA predecessor to abandon a new technology it had proudly developed. And sort of the reasoning behind that would be in one poll, 7 out of 10 Americans said they were excited about the program and willing to invest their own money in a DIDS transmitter. But as the Watergate scandal spread, so too did public distrust of the government. When congressional oversight hearings highlighted secret surveillance programs and dirty tricks by the FBI and CIA, the government quickly shelved the entire warning system. Quote, "The technology is there," one federal officer explained anonymously afterwards, "but after Watergate, there was no way we were going to tell John Q. Public that we were going to put something in his home TV that was controlled by the government." By the 1980s, the government had settled into the emergency broadcast system with regular public tests, turning its incessant buzz and staccato warning voice into a familiar aspect of the American TV and radio experience. Behind the scenes, FEMA and the Pentagon tested the system twice a day, ready for a Soviet attack, which never came. Right, so it definitely does have the effect, whether there's anything actually happening or not, but it does have that sort of psychological effect on the public at large, that whatever that psychological effect may be, it could be anything from Donald Trump said to "have a nice day" and smile at the world, right? Or it could be Donald Trump said, basically, "you're all FUCK'd," right? So it could be a wide range of things, but the one thing I've sort of made a rule of my personal life is to not have, not allow myself to react to whatever the government wants me to react to.
Question.
My wife's over here asking me questions.
Yeah. Does it come from the President Alert? Does it come from the President or Homeland Security?
Well, the test comes from FEMA.
Oh, okay.
But if Trump wants to tweet something to everybody and they have to read it, that was the other thing I was going to say. You have to read it. Like, you don't have the option of not reading it, because for all you know, it's an Amber Alert. It was like the exact same test as an Amber Alert. And so, of course, you're going to read it. But every time I've ever seen an Amber Alert, it was always in some county 500 miles away, right? So that doesn't do much good. But yeah. So anyway, back to the article. There was just a couple more things I wanted to touch on in the article. So it continues on. Beyond the government's official systems, some media outlets readied their own doomsday warnings. When Ted Turner launched CNN, the network secretly prepared a video featuring the final song played by the band aboard the Titanic, set to air during the final moments before nuclear Armageddon. As Turner said publicly, quote, "We'll be on and we'll cover the end of the world live, and that will be our last event. We'll play the national anthem only one time on the 1st of June when the network premiered, and when the end of the world comes, we'll play Near My God to Thee before we sign off." CNN recorded the song played by a joint U.S. military band, joint military band, with an honor guard standing at attention, and the tape sat in the network's archives for years, slugged as, quote, "Turner Doomsday Video." The program's notes read, HFR, till the end of the world confirmed, using the network's abbreviation for "hold for release," as Turner explained. "We knew we'd only sign off once, and I knew what that would mean." Oh my God. So playing right into the nuclear propaganda, playing right into the whole doomsday, keeping people just scared on the seat of their pants, scared at every little second of every day. You got the terror alert system, you got the presidential alert system, you got the Amber Alert system, you got the Turner Doomsday Video. and that's my point, is they just love to push people's buttons and get people to react in specific ways to whatever, whatever their whims may be. And for the most part, people will indeed react in that exact manner. That's how they got us into the Iraq War. That's how they got us into pretty much every war. But it is sort of a rule of nature. Read The Art of War. Um, that if a government doesn't have the will of the people behind an armed conflict or a war, then the war cannot be won. You've got that they have to have the will and the intent of the people behind and backing their wars and whatever their agendas may be. And for the most part, they've really, you got to give them credit. They've done an excellent job of doing exactly that, and literally manufacturing people's consent to do just all sorts of really terrible and awful things that normal decent people certainly wouldn't do of their own volition. But as they say, when you corner and scare a wild animal, or if you corner and scare any sort of creature, it will lash out at you. And whether that fear tactic and cornering tactic is perceived or real doesn't matter. The end result is the same. So they've done a very masterful job of creating this system where they can, at their whim, basically get people's reaction. The whole problem, reaction, solution thing. They'll create a problem that does not appear to be the problem that they've created, but it'll be a socially engineered problem or done by proxy. And then by the time that people are looking for solutions, they're getting the desired reaction that they want out of the people through these subliminal tactics. And by the time people are demanding solutions, well, in swoops the right hand of the same entity that created the problem to solve the problem. And the only way to solve the problem is to dump a bunch of money at this hand, whoever this entity is, dump a bunch of money at them, and they'll solve the problem that they created. And it works. That's people do it. People go right along with it, as crazy as it is. But so I think really, that's not to say that we don't need to be sort of wary of that whole October surprise thing. Okay, maybe this is just bait for the conspiracy theorists to go wild, but I wouldn't be surprised, in lieu of the whole October surprise coinciding with this presidential alert test system. Again, I'm not connecting too many dots here, but I would not be surprised if something catastrophic were to now happen in the next few weeks, right? Like it wouldn't faze me much because of these sort of cues. But perhaps that is just the desired reaction that they want, because that's a whole other big part of this mind control programming, is they want you to get complacent. So the first couple times you've got the whole 923 scare going on, which I never got into that, but you know what I mean? Like these whole date setting of terrible catastrophic events that are going to happen soon. And then the date comes and goes and everything's fine and nothing happens. And, the first couple times, wow, I mean, I remember 1999 and all computers were never going to work again because it was a flaw in the underlying code of the computers. And oh man, everybody thought that was just going to be the end of the civilized world. Money won't work and the stock exchange will go down, and even medical systems will reboot themselves, and it was just a bunch of malarkey. But that's the sort of state of fear that they want everybody in, and yeah, it definitely works. But so what could happen though is they could be putting out that forewarning. They always seem to telegraph their next move. It's like an unwritten law. And so I just wouldn't be surprised to see something happen. And I used to be very wary and afraid of the whole nuclear threat, nuclear bombs. But I've come to realize that nuclear bombs, this is my personal view on the thing based on my research, couldn't possibly exist and do not exist and are necessarily a hoax. And now that isn't to say that technology isn't there to create super massive explosions. It's just not possible to split an atom, which causes this chain reaction that you can put on a single warhead, a bomb that will destroy the whole world. That's, to me, that's ridiculous. You can believe what you want, but they certainly do have the ability to pack hundreds of tons of TNT or other equivalent explosives underneath of a city and explode that off, call it a nuclear attack, and that will lead, that sort of thing would definitely lead us into war with whomever they wanted to convince us did the attack. And it's not a question of if this sort of thing is going to happen, whether it's manufactured weather, geoengineering, or whether it's a massive explosion or whatever, the next 9/11. It's not a question of if. It really truly is a question of when. And I'm not going to go setting any dates. I'm not going to say it's going to be anytime soon, but I got to tell you, I would not be surprised if something does happen. And part of me, this is just based on my kooky conspiracy theories and my research, but I'd be willing to bet that Texas would be not a place that I would want to be. That's just me, because Texas is very much unique in many ways in the United States. It really is almost like a country in and of itself, the way that the laws are written, and it is the Lone Star State. And if any state was to secede from the Union in the future, I believe the first state would be Texas, because they're a very independent state. Also, infrastructural wise, Texas is a horse of a different color when it comes to the power grid of the nation. And maybe this is outdated information, but I do remember knowing that the power grid of the entire United States is in 3 sections: the West Coast section, the East Coast section, and Texas. And so by knocking out, or potentially knocking out, Texas's electrical infrastructure, they could do damage to the entire system as a whole, because it's all sort of interconnected and redundant systems. And so in that regard, EMPs, electromagnetic pulse, is very, very real. So even though a nuclear bomb is not real, large amounts of explosives and electromagnetic pulse are. And so it would be very easy for whomever to false flag a nuke. And I really would not be surprised if they do something like that in the future at some point, because they really want to do whatever they can to shore up people's belief in these theoretical physics: infinite space, and then the infinitely small, the macro and the micro. And basically, if you look at atomic theory, you've got little heliocentric models down in the atomic level, and little galaxies, basically, although a little bit different, but essentially galaxies of little heliocentric models to make molecules, right? And that's more or less, the 10,000-foot view of atomic theory. And the idea that you can take electrons off of an atom and fire them out of a cathode ray tube is, to me, is ridiculous. The idea that you can split an atom and cause a chain reaction, which is an explosion that can wipe out, if large enough fuel source, enriched uranium or whatever, can basically destroy the entire world. I don't buy into it. However, it's very important for them to do whatever they can to keep people believing in their theories, because so much of this deception really does ride on theoretical physics. The fear factor of nuclear weapons, as well as the complete confoundment factor of the spinning ball Earth theory. So yeah, Ted Turner definitely is a pretty creepy guy. So moving on to the next. Kyrie Irving, this is a relatively recent article from a few days ago, wishes that he had never said the world is flat. Yeah. So Boston Celtics star Kyrie Irving is sorry he ever said the earth was flat. On Monday, the Hoops superstar appeared at the Forbes Under 30 Summit and was asked if he still believes the world is flat. Irving didn't claim that he had changed his mind, but he did apologize for ever bringing up the subject. "I'm sorry about that," he said, adding that he is constantly dealing with angry science teachers who tell him, "You got to know, I got to reteach my whole curriculum." Wow. So, first of all, Kyrie Irving was never exactly the best proponent for flat Earth. He is not necessarily recanting, but he is going publicly and basically apologizing to people and saying that he wished he'd never said it. And I can sympathize with that. I guess it is unwanted attention. And if you're not prepared to really debate with the science teacher types, um, which it is, they are difficult to debate with, not because it's hard to prove flat Earth. It's just difficult to deal with people who believe that they live stuck to the side of a spinning sphere, because you know, they're going to hold that assumption regardless of anything that you show them or prove to them. They will never admit when a valid point is made, and only by really revisiting their own inherent belief systems in nature will they even begin on this journey of waking up to flat Earth. And so we can't really blame the science teachery types for being globe heads. But at the same time, we can just do whatever we can to introduce them to the topic, make common sense to them, and urge them to try and prove that their ass is spinning along an inverse square curve at 1,000 miles an hour near the equator, right? So let's see, Kyrie Irving, and this is just a stupid article. It's another one of those things where the mainstream media, and this is Huffington Post, is keeping flat Earth in the sort of in their tabloids rotation, right? Because they'll never put out a piece that proves that the Earth is a spinning ball, but they will put out periodically pieces that poke fun at flat earthers. And Kyrie Irving has done a lot, given them a lot of fuel to that fire. But at the same time, we can't necessarily ostracize people like Kyrie Irving for going out and saying the Earth is flat. Whether or not he's prepared to argue it, I don't know. But we can't chastise them for that, because people need to go out and say that. But I think that we can sort of raise an eyebrow when they go out apologizing for saying it, because who is this going to hurt? So this science teacher has to reteach their entire curriculum to reconvince or to more thoroughly brainwash their students that the Earth is a spinning ball. But the same science teachery type will simply refuse to consider the notion that the Earth might actually be flat and stationary. That will never be entertained by your normie science teacher types unless they can be motivated to look at the evidence. And frankly, most people don't think that this topic is even worth looking at. And so it's very easy to shrug it off. It's very easy to remain within the mind control programming of the ball Earth, because it is ubiquitous, and you'll get along great with all the science teacher types, and you'll keep your job, and you'll probably get a raise if you're into the whole science field, if you find, I don't know, new planets with water on them, even though it's just a little blip of spectroscopy that could be any number of things in the in the atmosphere. But no, it's some exoplanet or some Earth-like planet trillions of light years away that they can't see it. They can just see the host star dims a bit when it passes in front of it, right? As if their ecliptic plane is necessarily going to be aligned to our eye, which makes really no sense in the scheme of infinite space. The last thing you'd expect to see is any or most stars ecliptic planes of their planets being aligned to our eye. That's very, very rare that would happen. It's like 1 in 360 on either vector. So in the x vector, it's a 1 in 360 chance, and on the y vector, it's a 1 in 360 chance. So do the math on that. I guess maybe it wouldn't matter as long as one of them was aligned, but even still, right? It just so happens that these exoplanets that they can discover, they can see the planet transiting the host star, not because they can actually see it, but because they can measure the dimming of the host star's light from our perspective. But that is hinging on the idea or the notion that their ecliptic plane is aligned to our eye. And to me, that seems like it would be very uncommon. But in the ball Earth model, they can say, no, it happens all the time. In fact, it's the norm. All ecliptic planes are aligned to our eye because the Earth is a spinning ball. Right. So, yeah. Kyrie Irving, so not scoring too many points for Flat Earth, but he did make a public apology, and he said, even if you believe in that, just don't come out and say that stuff. That's for intimate conversations, because perception while you're received, and it doesn't make any sense, and it changes. He said, adding that he didn't realize the effect his words would have. But this idea that talking about Flat Earth must be reserved for intimate conversations, to me, is absurd, because they're literally forcing all generations of toddlers to believe in the ball. And so we're supposed to keep the truth in whispered tones for fear of pissing off some science teacher because he might have to re-brainwash some of his students who know the truth. Wow, what a sick, sad world, I'm telling you. Right. So, and I guess, on the whole Kyrie Irving thing, I guess basketballs prove that basket courts are spherical, just like the moon proves the earth is a sphere. Basketballs are spherical, therefore, basketball courts must necessarily be spherical. Period. End of story. Right? All right, so next, touchdown. Japan space probe lands new robot on asteroid. Yeah, I call BS on this. Um, and if you guys can just pardon me for 1 second, I've got to get a drink. And I will mute my microphone so you don't have to hear me sloshing it around. Alrighty. Sorry about that. Okay, so allegedly, JAXA has landed this satellite object robot on an asteroid, and boy, does it look fake to me. Look at the skid marks. I mean, who took that picture? I'd like to know. As it's skid marking onto the asteroid, like, that is a great photographer there, I'll tell you. Japanese probe landed, and this is from phys.org news. Japanese probe landed on a new observation robot. I'm sorry, landed a new observation robot on an asteroid on Wednesday as it pursues a mission to shed light on the origins of the solar system. Oh, wow, as if we need more light on the origins of the solar system theory. But it continues on to say the French-German Mobile Asteroid Surface Scout, or MASCOT, they sure love their acronyms, I'll tell you. MASCOT launched from the Hayabusa 2 probe, landed safely on Ryugu, and was in contact with its team, the lander's official Twitter account said. And by the way, I was just going to say, there's a guy at NASA getting paid $50 million a year to come up with acronyms all day long. Tax dollars at work, I'll tell you. All right. So it continues on. And then I found myself in a place like no place on earth, a land full of wonder, mystery, and danger. The Mascot 2018 account tweeted, I landed on asteroid Ryugu. Mascot is expected to collect a wide range of data on the asteroid, some 300 million kilometers or 190 million miles from Earth. So I wonder, does an object that's 190 million miles from Earth, and that's more than double the distance to the sun, allegedly, according to them, is that put something in the realm of falsifiability and verifiability, or does it put it in the realm of pseudoscience that nobody will ever be able to verify? And I would definitely say it is the latter. So let's see here. There's a video for this, and I actually downloaded it. So let's take a look at this video, because I'll tell you, if there ever was convincing evidence that the JAXA space program landed on an asteroid 200 million miles away, it sure is not this video. So let's see it. No sound on there, but look at this crap. Look at this. This looks like something off of like an Atari game. It doesn't look real at all. It looks like Moon Patrol. I mean, how gennaro can you possibly get, JAXA? So I wonder how much that, and that was it. That was the video that they had of the thing landing on the asteroid. And I mean, this is worse, I think, than the old Apollo stuff. It doesn't even look remotely real. I mean, it looks worse than PlayStation 1 graphics to me. It really does. I don't see why they make it so just uber generic, and they get away with it. People are going to believe that that's proof that they landed on an asteroid. But can you believe that? I mean, look at this CGI and this fakery. And basically, they're saying that they're doing this in order to study the solar system. Oh my God, give me a break. Yeah, they landed that little box onto an asteroid. I definitely don't believe it. And so they're going to take samples from this asteroid, and then how is that thing going to get back? I want to know. So I guess it's going to analyze it right there on the spot. I didn't read too much into the article because who has time? But I guess I thought I had highlighted some bits of this, and maybe I did not. But you can look it up yourself. It's just more garbage. It goes to show you that Japan Space Agency is just as deceptive and just as untrustworthy as NASA and all the other ones, because as I say, space is just as fake in China and Japan and United States and Russia. It's not like there's some mystical place that magically has fake space that's real. Space is fake everywhere, and the world has been flat forever. And the lights in the night sky are merely lights in the night sky, just above us, not millions and trillions of miles away, not light years away, not giant stars spinning around in infinite space. Infinite space doesn't exist. The sky is above us. It's not in every direction, including below your feet. At some distance, the sky is above us. It's above me here in the United States. The sky is the same direction above everyone in Australia and Europe. There is no infinite space. That is a myth. It is just as ridiculous as Santa Claus. Same thing goes with the spinning ball Earth. Right. And that goes for Japan just as it does for here. So anyone that says that, oh, well, if NASA were faking space, then Japan would call them out on it. Well, guess what, Bubba? Japan is faking space too. That's the point. Right. So, I wanted to touch on this very quickly. I got an email from somebody and a link to this idea because I did do the models video the other day. If you haven't seen it, check that out. I just put it out the other day. And basically, this is the Möbius Strip Flat World MGRS/UTM grid system. Now, I'm not making this claim. I'm just reading this thread because I'm pretty sure it's too small for you guys to see. But this is off of just a regular, looks like a chat room thread, bitcointalk.org. So they say that this grid system, beyond a doubt, proves flatness. It says you simply cannot have different sized grid with curves. The length 40,000 is that 40,000 meters by the 360 degrees is 111.111 meters per degree. Add 0 as you like. 20,000 meters wide makes 20,000 square for each day and night. So that didn't make a whole lot of sense, but anyway, it's just another sort of model that people are looking at and kicking around, which it's kind of interesting in terms of what's going on in the heavens. They say that the north-south poles togetherness is proven by the tides happening on opposite ends at the same time. The Mercator UTM map, literature, A Voyage to the Inner World by Olaf Janssen, Admiral Richard Byrd discovering Greenland, an area as big as U.S., the Russian-U.S. Antarctic Station location. So there are people out there that seem to think that this map is solving some problems and works nicely. I'm not going to claim that I fully understand it and want to get behind it, but based on what I've seen, it looks interesting, and all this stuff is definitely worth a look into if you've got the time, of course. So I wanted to mention that. And again, the name of that is the Möbius Strip model, I guess. Maybe that's the wrong part of the thread, but yeah, the thread name is 4D Möbius Strip Flat World. So basically what they're saying is like the skies basically twist around themselves once every 24 hours, I suppose. So, and the whole thing rotates completely once per year, I think is what they said. So the individual parts rotate once a day, and then the whole entire system rotates once a year. And I would imagine that it also has some precession, long-term precession. It necessarily would in its annual orbit or annual rotation. So it would, it would precess over 26,000 years, just as we see with the precession of the equinoxes. Right. So interesting stuff. Just wanted to touch on that very quickly. Pardon me. Okay, let me skip this one for now, and I may come back to it because I don't know. Didn't seem like it was going to go anywhere with it. But anyway, all right. So let's see. What was I going to go to next? Right. So where's my little notes here? Oh, so I guess I do have to do this one first. All right. So let's see here. Let me read this pieces of this article. I did highlight some of it. So I'll read the headline first. Okay. So former manager of DoD Aerospace Threat Program says UFOs are real. You don't say. So basically, according to this TTS AAS statement, its team members who have been operating under the shadows of top secrecy for decades believe that there is sufficient credible evidence of UAP or or unidentified aerial phenomenon, maybe, that proves exotic technologies exist that could revolutionize the human experience. Right. So it says this could represent the beginning of a trend towards new openness on the part of the U.S. government. These people know more than any of us, and they would be releasing more important data on UAP in the future. So basically, this is some more wild claims by people in higher positions in the government who are claiming that UFOs are real. And I think that UFOs are definitely real, but doesn't necessarily mean they're driven by little green men from other worlds. Doesn't mean they're driven by little green men at all. It's most likely the majority of them, I believe, are government technologies. And if there is any truth to this whole extraterrestrial business, then they're coming from some other distant part of the plane, and certainly not coming from any other world in the sky, which is ridiculous. But continuing on with the article, this guy stated that he ran a, quote, sensitive aerospace threat identification program focusing on unidentified aerial technologies, end quote. His job at TTS AAS will be to work as a liaison and interlocutor, whatever, in the collection of this information for the science division, allowing us to collect facts for analysis. How will this be done? One way is through the COI, which will, quote, provide a platform for the detection and triangulation of phenomena events in real time and allows two-way communication between the public and our team regarding this information, end quote. As a result of his position managing the DoD program for almost a decade, Lou said, quote, I learned that the phenomenon is indeed real. And it goes on to say, Lou also stated, we are also planning to provide never before released footage from real U.S. government systems, not blurry amateur photos, but real data and real videos. And even more significant, we're all inviting our government colleagues and friends in defense to participate regularly with their own findings, end quote. Another member of the team, Stephen Justice, an experienced aerospace engineer, explained that he will use scientific discoveries about the travel of unmanned aerial phenomenon through space, demonstrating almost unimaginable technologies to develop technology that can change the world. Steve recently retired as a program director for advanced systems at Lockheed Martin after a 31-year career in the Skunk Works. Quote, how dare we think that the physics we have today is all that there is, end quote. He told me in an interview a few days ago. The opportunity here, as he sees it, is to, quote, stand in the future and look back. Steve's objective is to harvest this advanced technology to build a vehicle that will allow for almost instantaneous travel through land, air, oceans, and space by engineering the fabric of space-time. Such a vehicle could also float like something from science fiction. Steve says we have had glimpses of the science that could make this possible. It's not outside the realm of possibility if the necessary resources are in place. So, okay, I think some of these things that they're saying, so like they're claiming that by engineering the fabric of space-time, which makes absolutely no sense at all, because frankly, nobody really knows or understands what space-time is except for in a theoretical application only. You got to understand you're dealing with physical space, like coordinates in space, and then non-physical time, which I do understand the fourth dimension of time. So, like, if I'm sitting in this spot now and an hour I walk away, then there's your fourth dimension. You can't have two objects occupying the same space at the same time, but you certainly can have two objects occupying the same space at two different times. And so, in that respect, yes, time is a fourth dimension. But um, what they're saying is that by engineering the fabric of space-time, which makes no sense because the fabric of space-time is a vacuum of nothing, that in theory is intermeshed physical space with non-physical time. Um, so I'm not sure how you could engineer that, but then he says such a vehicle could also float like something from science fiction. And so when they said that, it really just brought up some thoughts of this guy here. And I wish I could remember his name, but it's such a funky name. I'll try to put it in the show notes, but maybe if I put the sound on here on this video clip, I'll hear it and then I can say his name, but I just may not talk for a minute. But let me just play this clip, and you guys have probably seen this before, but this is a little bit of an older video, it appears, and this guy is using some technologies based on the vibrating and resonating wings of different insects that can hover. And what I think will happen is when somebody brings this sort of technology out, they're going to claim that it is Einstein technology. So they're going to claim that they're engineering the fabric of space and time to make this thing fly, but in fact, it's going to be some other patented technology that will be protected as a trade secret, proprietary secret, and so they can go on saying it is whatever the hell they want people to believe that it is, because again, it's very important for this adversary to confirm Einstein's theories, because so much of their deception relies on these theories to be true, and so they will always be forever cherry picking circumstantial evidence and presenting it as proof of their theories, and even fabricating whole cloth evidence, presenting it as proof of their theories, but certainly never actually producing any proof. So let me roll this little clip here. Let me listen for the guy's name. GREBENECAUGH was his name. Okay, great. So yeah, GREBENECAUGH. The technology that he's using to levitate and fly, he claimed at 1,000 miles an hour, which I don't see how that's possible, but he said that there was an energy field built up around the thing that allowed him to basically disobey the laws of inertia more or less, and there was no sort of aerodynamic drag on this craft because of the manner in which it traveled. At least these are the claims. So what my point is, though, and whether this seems to be legitimate to me, it makes the technology makes sense, and it seems legit. But even if, let's just say it's not legitimate, such a technology clearly can exist, whether it's something electromagnetic or some other technology we don't understand. There definitely appear to be UFOs in the sky. And again, that isn't to say that they're being flown around in the sky by little green men necessarily, but it does mean that there are things that are not airplanes that are flying around in the sky and doing really bizarre and seemingly impossible maneuvers. And exactly this same sort of technology would explain that very nicely. But what theoretical science is famous for doing is taking some natural either observation or even a technology and claiming that for their theoretical alliance. And they'll go ahead and say that, oh, that thing works because of, we're manipulating the fabric of space-time, and you would never understand the mathematics that we use to get it to do this, when in reality it's just a certain resonant vibrational pattern frequency that they use in order to get this lift, the same exact kind of lift that a bumblebee gets when he vibrates his body in resonance with his harmonic resonance frequency. It's sort of like this whole Hutchison effect that we're just now scratching the surface on so many technologies that Nikola Tesla apparently wanted to roll out a long time ago. And if his work hadn't have been sort of hindered, and the free energy technologies hadn't been put back into the bottle, I think that we would just be in such a better position today on so many levels. But that's the way the cookie crumbles. So I just wanted to bring that up because you're just getting more of this space UFO alien propaganda. And, if UFOs were to land in my driveway today and little green men hopped out, I would be like, well, that makes a lot of sense on the flat earth. I really would. Because, coming from a background when my whole life I believed that the earth was a spinning ball in outer space, one thing that sort of bugged me about this sort of cultural phenomenon of aliens or UFOs was the fact that there really are no planets close enough to allow for little green men to get here. And, it's first to find us in the needle in the haystack of the cosmos, then to travel here some trillions of miles, which isn't possible according to our technology. But then when they get here, they've got, they kind of look like humanoids. They've got 2 eyes, 2 legs, 2 arms, maybe 4 or 5 digits on their hands, and they just look very humanoid. And coming from some other galaxy or coming from some other solar system, that really doesn't make a whole lot of sense. The last thing you would expect is for an alien from another world, in that theory, to look like a human. Genetically speaking, people would have more in common with a garden tomato than they would with an alien from another world. And so the fact that, or this hypothetical fact that they are humanoid, is very good evidence that they are not actually coming from some distant world, but in fact they're coming from some distant part upon the plane, and would have, come up in very similar circumstances to us. And so by that respect, it would make a lot of sense on the flat earth. And there's a lot of people that for some reason they feel that UFOs and little green men even are somehow mutually exclusive to flat earth, but I don't think that's the case. In fact, I think little green men fit much better on the flat earth than they do on the ball earth for the very reasons that I just named. Right. So moving right along. Yeah. But so anyway, so he says such a vehicle could also float like something from science fiction. Steve says we have had glimpses of the science that could make this possible. It's not outside the realm of possibility if the necessary resources are in place. So, just be on the lookout for this sort of deception, because, this sort of brings it back full circle to the whole presidential test thing. Wouldn't that be something if you get a text from Donald Trump saying that he has just signed over our great United States to aliens or something? Right? I don't know. That'd be a little too off the wall, but yeah. Righto. So let's see here. So we've seen that. Okay. So the last thing I think that I wanted to talk to, yeah, was the gyroscopic drift and Coriolis effect for snipers, because this is a claim made by ball earthers. And I got to looking into it, and there's some pretty big problems with the claim that snipers are experiencing Coriolis force. And I will tell you why. So let's see here. Now, there's a difference between gyroscopic spin drift and the Coriolis acceleration, according to science. According to science. So let me start with gyroscopic spin drift, and this is for long-range shooters. First, a quick fact about spinning objects. And by the way, this article is from appliedballistics.com. So if anybody out there has issues with the claims made here, take them up with Applied Ballistics, not with me. Okay? These are not my claims that I'm reading from this. But there is a big problems with it, and you'll soon see. Right. So picture a spinning object like a bullet or a top. The spinning object has a spin axis about which it's spinning. If you try to disturb the spin axis by applying a force or a torque to that axis, the spinning object reacts in a strange way. Rather than simply moving in the direction that you pushed it, the spin axis reacts by moving 90 degrees from the applied force in the direction of rotation. In other words, if you have a top spinning clockwise on the table in front of you and push the top of its stem straight away from you, the stem's first reaction is to jump to the right. After the initial reaction, it will process into its new equilibrium. Now on to bullets. Consider a bullet fired at some range on a long-range trajectory. The bullet starts out with its spin axis aligned with its velocity vector. As the trajectory progresses, gravity accelerates the bullet down, introducing a component of velocity towards the ground. The bullet reacts like a spinning football on a long pass. By weather vaning its nose to follow the velocity vector, which is a nose-down torque. The price you pay for torquing the axis of rotation is that the nose points slightly to the right as it traces to follow the velocity vector. This slight nose right flight results in a lateral drift known as gyroscopic drift. Having a left or right twist will change the direction of gyroscopic drift. Bullets fired from right twist barrels drift to the right, and vice versa by the same amount, typically 8 to 9 inches at 1,000 yards for small arms trajectories. Gyroscopic drift is an interaction of the bullet's mass and aerodynamics with the atmosphere that it's flying in. Gyroscopic drift depends on the properties of the density of the atmosphere, but has nothing to do with the Earth's rotation. Now it gets into Coriolis acceleration. Accelerations due to the Coriolis effect are caused by the fact that the Earth is spinning, or I would say the assumption that the Earth is spinning, and are dependent on where you are on the planete and which direction you're firing. It breaks down like this, and this is the important part here. There are horizontal and vertical components to Coriolis acceleration. The horizontal component depends on your latitude, which is how far you are above or below the equator. Maximum horizontal effects is at the poles, 0 at the equator. The horizontal component doesn't depend on which direction you shoot. Typical horizontal Coriolis drift for many small arms trajectory fired at near 45 degrees north latitude is about 2.5 to 3 inches to the right at 1,000 yards. Right. So let me read this one sentence again. The horizontal component, or two sentences, doesn't depend on which direction you shoot. Typical horizontal Coriolis drift for a small arms trajectory fired near 45 degrees north latitude is about 2.5 to 3 inches to the right at 1,000 yards. So what does that mean? The horizontal component doesn't depend on which direction you shoot, and it will always be 2.5 to 3 inches to the right at 1,000 yards from that latitude. So that right there sure is a convoluted mouthful of garbage. So what they're saying is, if you're on the spinning ball with it spinning in the direction that the arrow is going, let me zoom in a bit, and you're going to fire a gun in any direction, then it's always going to go to the right, always. It's saying you're at the 45-degree north latitude, which is somewhere around there. It's not perfect, but whatever. You get the gist of it. That makes absolutely no sense because, okay, if you're going to fire west, and it's okay, so it said not at the equator and the maximum at the pole for the horizontal. Isn't that what it said? Let me make sure I'm not misquoting it. Horizontal component depends on your latitude, which is how far. Maximum is at the poles, right? So that actually kind of makes sense. Now, I will say that what's causing this is the rotation of the ether and the atmosphere, but of course they're saying that it is the spin of the Earth, and that the horizontal component doesn't depend on which direction you shoot, that always going to go to the right. So, okay, how does that work if you're, let me put an arrow on the end of this. Oh, sorry, y'all. So if, okay, you're going to shoot to the west, this thing is going to vector off to the right because the Earth is spinning that way. And if you shoot north, the thing is going to vector off to the right because the Earth is spinning that way. And if you shoot to the east, it's also going to vector to the right because the Earth is spinning that way. And if you shoot south, it's going to vector to the right or west because the Earth is spinning that way. That makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. And in fact, the only place on the entire globe that would make sense would be on the top exact dead-on balls of the axis at the North Pole. The only place that would happen, because everything's supposedly spinning in the easterly direction. So if you fire to the west, how is that going to cause that to go off to the right? That makes absolutely no sense. And I'll tell you what's actually going on is most barrels are rifled to the right so that the spin drift, the gyroscopic spin drift, is going to be to the right. Now, I actually called around some manufacturers and some custom gun parts. I recorded the calls. I'm going to try to put them in a video if I can make anything decent of it. I don't know if I've got enough, but I may have to wait to Monday to get some more calls in because a lot of places are closed. But they call it, when you get it rifled to the left, the spiral grooves within the barrel of the gun, which cause the bullet to spin, can be oriented clockwise or counterclockwise. And if you get it so that the bullet spins to the left, they call that a left-handed barrel. But you know, the first immediate question I have is, if this science paper is correct, let me read it again, because again, this is appliedballistics.com. The horizontal component, so left to right, horizontal, doesn't depend on which direction you shoot. Coriolis drift for small arms trajectory fired near 45 degrees north latitude is about 2.5 to 3 inches to the right at 1,000 yards. So if you have a choice as to whether your barrel is going to make your bullet drift to the right or to the left, then if the bullet's naturally going always to the right no matter which direction you shoot in the northern hemisphere, then wouldn't it sort of make a little bit more sense to get a quote-unquote left-handed barrel in the northern hemisphere? And this is only at 45 degrees north. Now, the reason that they say that this works is because of this sort of demonstration of Coriolis force. So let me play this and just take a look at this and see what's going on here with these children pushing a ball off to one another. They're pushing the ball straight. It's going counterclockwise, and it goes off to the left, always to the left. That's your Coriolis force right there. But what's going on with them is they're actually pushing this ball towards and across the axis of rotation. And that's the only way that this ball always only ever goes in one direction, apparently, due to the Coriolis force, is if you're very close to the axis and that projectile object is traveling across the axis. Because if you were, say, perpendicular to that axis, stuck to the side of this spinning merry-go-round, as we are supposedly doing on the ball Earth, then the vectors of this situation would change completely. And I'm sorry, but on the ball Earth, if what applied ballistics is claiming is true, and I know that it cannot be true, the only reason that everything is going to the right is because most of the damn barrels are going to the right. And if there is anything naturally that's causing this tendency or aiding in this tendency one way or another, it is the ether. Because we know that the ether spinning around constantly does have an effect not only on electromagnetic objects, but on projectile objects. So it makes a lot of sense that you do have this sort of left or right horizontal tendency depending on the hemisphere. But for them to say that it always goes to the right, regardless of the direction that you shoot at 45 degrees north, say, to me, that makes absolutely zero sense on the ball, because I could understand if you shoot this way, north to south, it goes to the right. Or if you shoot this way, north to south, whatever, south to north, it goes to the right. But east and west, well, if you're shooting west towards the spin of the Earth, the bullet should tend to want to sort of come back at you with the atmosphere, because everything's supposedly spinning towards the east. And if you shoot this way, and they do claim that, as I did talk to a guy that works for a place that builds guns, and according to them, and even according to this article here, if you fire east and west, then you have to worry about the drop being different, the bullet drop being a little slightly different. So if you fire one way, you'll hit higher, and if you fire the other way, you'll hit lower. And they say that that is also because of the spin of the Earth. But I would argue that if there is actually a drop like that, it is more to do with the ether and the natural electromagnetic vortex of the Earth, rather than the Earth itself spinning. And I even told the guy, I was being sort of tongue in cheek, but we're supposedly spinning 800 miles an hour. What does a little bit of a breeze have to? Why would a breeze be more or have more of an impact on a bullet than the damn spin of the Earth? And more or less, he said that the Coriolis force really isn't factored in. It's mostly the winds. And this is what other snipers have told me as well. It's mostly the winds that you have to factor in, and at longer shots, it is the gyroscopic, apparent drift of the bullet due to the spinning, the rifling. But this whole thing here doesn't make sense to me on the ball. And again, I'm not the one making the claim, but the ball Earth claim, according to applied ballistics, is that Coriolis force will make your bullet go always vector off to the right, regardless of the direction that you shoot. And so, I don't know. If it was up to me, I would get my barrels left-handed, because it would offset some of that, right? Because not all shots are going to be 1,000 yards. If it was half that, then the drift of the bullet would be half that. And so if you had a left spinning barrel, then this Coriolis force would be offset completely at 500 yards, more or less. You wouldn't have to factor it in at all. You could cancel out some of that apparent drift due to Coriolis force. But I would argue that the drift that we're seeing that always goes to the right, no matter which direction you fire, has to do with the spin of the bullet. And in the southern hemisphere, I would not be surprised if most people had left-handed barrels in the southern hemisphere. The same sort of thing they do with the toilets in the southern hemisphere, right? It wouldn't surprise me if that was the standard. And although if all the bullets are tending to the left, then it would make more sense for them to have a right-hand barrel rifling, spinning to the right. So, yeah, just more garbage from the globe, not making a whole lot of sense with the Coriolis force that they claim applies to bullets in flight, but certainly not to airplanes, because we don't measure that. Certainly not to anything else in reality, except for when it conveniently, sort of hypothetically supports the ball. Oh yes, of course, Neil deGrasse claimed that punters, or football kickers, need to factor in the Coriolis force. But no, helicopter pilots, nah. Airplanes, nah. Dragonflies, nah. Does only affects certain things when it's convenient for the ball Earth. Yeah, sure it does. So let's see. I think that covers everything I wanted to go over today. Let me pop back in and check on the chat one more time before I bounce. But thanks so much, everybody, for hanging out and watching today. I hope you guys are really all having a blessed and wonderful Saturday. I'm going to go grab something to eat and just enjoy the day. If you'd like to support the channel, it's viewer supported. You can do a one-time support contribution through PayPal to www.paypal.me/TheMorgile, or recurring contributions through Patreon at www.patreon.com/TheMorgile. So thanks so much, David Voy, in harmony with, Glowbusters. What's up, Bob? Playing Frisbee requires intimate knowledge of the Coriolis force. Yeah, indeed. Right. Uh, okay, so Flat Accord Music, Remy, David Voy, the Aussie Drama. Thanks so much, everyone, for hanging out. I had a good time with y'all today. And let me stop screen sharing and end the stream before I screw something up, right? So, all right, guys, take it easy. And as always, spread the word, spread the world, and peace out, everybody.